Africa! Welcome to the Africa Desk Live. This platform was built for you. Not for governments, donors, or foreign interests, but for you, the African citizen who loves this continent, even when it breaks your heart. And here is your host, Semantics King Jr.
Hello, everyone. My name is Semantics King, and this is the Africa Desk Live. We will be going with our guests later on when the show starts proper. I just came on to test the new system, so we can know how this is working. Please let me know if you can hear me in the comment section. This is the Africa Desk Live. We have been having issues in the last couple of weeks, and we thought about making some changes. We hope this will make a difference. So again, just testing how this is going to be right now before we can start the show proper at 10 o'clock. So let me know in the comment section if you can hear me. Let me know. Again, welcome to the Africa Desk. Today, the focus is going to be on Sierra Leone. And we will be having the guests both for the first hour as well as the second hour. At this moment, though, again, I'm just testing the system. I'm just trying to see how this is going to work. Let me know. Those of you who are joining us live, I see some people have joined. Please let me know in the comment section what you think. If you can hear me, let me know how this is going on before the guests can join us. Again, welcome to the Africa Desk today. It's July 11, and the focus is going to be Sierra Leone in West Africa. For those of you who are not familiar with Sierra Leone, it's an amazing country that borders Liberia and Guinea, and we will be having two of our guests joining us actually live from Freetown today when the show starts. I am hoping that I could hear from some of you out there who are live. I see some people are watching me. Please let me know in the comment section how this is going. If you can hear me, and let me know where you're joining us from. Drop in the comment section your location where you're joining us from so we know, and let us know your name as well. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us. Welcome to the Africa Desk Live. This is your platform. This is a channel, a system that has been built for you, the African citizen. You know, it's not wasn't built for any foreign interest, not built for governments, which is why most of the guests we bring on the show are not government officials. In very rare cases, you will see us bring government officials to the show to either react in reply to, I wouldn't call it accusations against government, but some pronouncements or statements that may be made about certain government officials or certain governments. We would love to hear from the government representatives themselves so they can come on the show and talk to us about those things they hear, you know. Yep. Um, you know. So again, I'm just trying to check the comment there. I haven't seen any comment from anyone yet. If you can hear me loud and clear, please text chat in the comment yes. Just the yes is fine. Just let me know. Say yes, I can hear you. If you cannot hear me, say no, so I understand what is going on here. Again, I'm just trying to test all of this before the show starts in about 20 minutes or thereabout. So please let me know in the comment section if you can hear me. I know certainly you may see me, but can you hear me? If you can hear me, let me know. Say yes in the comment section. I'm receiving signals that some comments may not post here. So, but please go ahead and drop your comments. I want to see those comments in there, just letting me know that you can hear me, you see me, you hear me, and that everything is sounding good. If it is not, let me know, please, so that I know what is going on. Okay. Again, this is, yes, I can confirm we are live on X. We are also live on YouTube. Okay. But I want to be able to hear from you. If the audio is clear to you, you can hear me loud and clear. If you cannot, I wouldn't know that. You have to let me know. Okay. So let me know in the comment section if you hear me loud and clear, so that I do not have to do any other thing, you know. You know, yes, it looks like my comment section is not working. Apparently, people may have been submitting comments there. Someone just alerted me. But can you hear me loud and clear though? I see your comment, your message to me. Yeah, the comment section is not working. So what I would like to do is I will go to Facebook and see. Okay, thank you. Thank you. It says the sound is good. Thank you for confirming that. Yes. We will work on the comment section. Again, listeners, viewers, this is our first time using this platform. Remember, we've been having issues in the past couple of weeks with the previous system we had. We've changed the system and we are now on a different system. And so, okay. So yes, we see that. Yes, I see that data is not showing. Again, I'm trying to see how the system works, but it's good that you can hear me loud and clear. So that's a plus. In terms of the comment section, I'm going to flip over. Mostly, I think the questions might be coming from Facebook. I am going to go to Facebook and see the comment section there, and then I can definitely read those comments. Yes, we are on Facebook Live. So I'll read your comments from the section here. I haven't seen any comment on Facebook though. So while the comment section on the platform may not be working, when you submit your comments on Facebook, I should be able to see those. So let me know. I've received a comment from a listener. Thank you so much, Heisenberg, that it is working. The sound is good. So we are not having issues with the sound. Like the only area we're having issues is with the comment section. So we will work on the comment section at probably another time, not right now, but thank you. Thank you for joining us. Again, this is the Africa Desk Live. This is your platform. It is not a platform for anyone. I see, yes, someone says, hello, I don't know who is asking to join here. Let me see who that person is. I don't know who you are. Can you tell me more? This person is messaging us from YouTube. Hello, how can I join? What is the StreamYard link? I don't know who is asking for the StreamYard link. Who may I know your name, please? Who is asking those questions from YouTube? Greed. Who is Greed? Who are you, Greed? I'm Greed. Okay. Econ Zion. Okay. I mean, if you're not a guest, if you're not going to be a guest on the show, there is no way I can send you a link to join us. This platform is the Africa Desk Live. Every Saturday we discuss Africa. We have started a year-long act. We call it 54 Conversations. Oh, you want to be a guest? Okay, no problem. Thank you. Thank you so much. You can reach out to our contacts. You are on you've seen us on YouTube, so we may have our contact on YouTube. If you don't find it there, you can find our contact on Facebook at the Africa Desk Live. You can message us. I'll give you our contact later on, but yeah, you can definitely be a guest on the show. But today we already have our guests. We have 4 amazing guests that I will talk about in detail later. 2 of them are going to be joining us from Freetown in Sierra Leone. They will be our guests for the first hour. The second hour, we will have 2 guests, but it's going to be 1. And I'll say more about why it's going to be 1 later on. We received a really bad news this morning before we came on air about our other guests who's supposed to be part of the second hour. And so we will talk about that later on in the show tomorrow. I mean, not tomorrow, later today. So sorry about that. But for the first hour, we have 2 amazing guests who are doing amazing work in Sierra Leone, who have been in Sierra Leone. So right now I'm seeing comments coming from YouTube. I don't see any comments coming from Facebook yet. So there are comments coming from YouTube from this particular person. We'll see. For Facebook, I don't see any comments there yet. When I see comments, especially when the show is on and your comments start coming in on Facebook, I will read those comments later on to our guests, But for right now, we are live on YouTube, on Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. The show proper starts at 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. That is in 12 minutes time. That will be around 3 o'clock p.m. in Sierra Leone. It will be 3 o'clock p.m. in Sierra Leone. And then the second hour, which focuses on community development and nonprofit or association, that second hour will be featuring different guests. They were supposed to be 2, but it's going to be 1 guest for the second hour. And the first hour, if you haven't listened to us at all, the first hour exclusively focuses on the country's politics. The second hour focuses on community development. So if you have a nonprofit or you are part of some sort of association or organization that is making impact both here in the diaspora, whether that is in the United States, in Canada, or in Europe, and you're making real impact in your community, locally and even internationally, reach out to us. Reach out to us at the Africa Desk Live, and uh, we will interact with you and see how we could bring you on the show to talk about the work that you are doing, because this platform is for you. It's not for government officials. You do not see government officials coming here. We have never brought any government officials on the show before. We don't intend doing so unless there is a need to do so, because this platform is for the citizens of Africa. It's for you, the African student, the African mother, African father, people who want to see real change in their countries. When we started this show, when we started the show itself in proper in April, we started looking at going through one country to another. It's not a tour. We just specifically and substantively discussing each African country. We started with Senegal, and then we went to Kenya, and then from Kenya we were supposed to have Morocco. It didn't really work out well. We went to Liberia. We had Liberia on the show, and after that we went to Ghana. We were supposed to go to Ivory Coast. That didn't work again because we started having some issues. And then just last week, we were supposed to have Nigeria, one of the big brothers on the continent of Africa. Again, because we had technical issues with the previous platform we had, we could not really have that live show with our guests. Today, with the platform we're on, we in Sierra Leone, we're going to discuss Sierra Leone, and we have our guests who are going to be joining us for the Sierra Leone show. So, welcome to the Africa Desk. This is where we discuss Africa. We discuss things that are affecting the citizens of Africa in different areas of their lives. We discuss policy, politics, and education, technology, youth empowerment, human rights, women's rights, children's rights. We discuss all those things. That's the plan. That's the goal for the show here. So welcome to the Africa Desk. In a few minutes time, and probably about 8 minutes, we will start the show proper. And thank you for those of you who have joined us, and thank you for letting us know how the sound is going and everything else. Thank you so much. We appreciate your presence. We appreciate your participation, and we look forward to doing this for you every Saturday on the things we African citizens need to do to make Africa as a continent better than the way we met it. And this is going to be reflected in each country. I will discuss each of the African countries. And today we are in Sierra Leone. We will specifically be in Freetown, and we'll be in Freetown, and our guests will be joining us from Freetown this morning. So thank you to everyone who has joined us. We really appreciate your presence, and we love what you are doing for us just by coming, taking your time, because this is Saturday. Every Saturday, people are busy, right? People, okay, Panado, welcome, Panado. I see. I think it's something you put in Facebook there, but thank you. Drop your name for us in the chat section, and then let us know your location so that we can know, where you are joining us from. Just let us know. Drop your name in the comment section, and if you are receiving any feedback on the show, whether it's through different distractions, please let me know as well. We try our best to be to give you the best we can in terms of the quality and type of guests that we bring to the show. We're going to try our best and bring you the best, nothing but the best guests that we can bring to the show, because they are the experts. We want them to talk about the things that are happening in Africa, right? The things happening in Africa. We want these experts to speak specifically to those things, because they are the only people who can tell you what is going on there, because they've been busy working there, especially like for the guests we're going to be having today on the show. They've been doing amazing work in Sierra Leone, so much that we will, be very happy to have them on the show. From Sierra Leone, two amazing guests from Sierra Leone. That is going to start in few hours, a few minutes rather. I'm still waiting for them, and then during the second hour, we will have community discussion. This is where we want to talk about the kind of work that the community can have, or different communities have, and the impact it has on people. This is what we're going to be doing, and we believe that the development of Africa is not left by it is not just left to one person. Every one of us, each and every one of us, can contribute and make the continent better than it is right now, or the way we met it. And that means doing our part. Every little thing that we need to you know, do our part. If it means we can help to clean up the streets, keep the streets clean, as I've been told is the case in Rwanda. Oh, we also have Rwanda here. Recently, we had Rwanda as an episode. We had amazing guests on the show, which generated a lot of movement and discussions actually on X, and I was supposed to talk about that again, but then we experienced serious technical issues to the lead up to, I mean, after that show. And so we couldn't discuss details of the Rwanda episode, because there were lots and lots of comments on X, formerly Twitter, about the Rwanda episode. Lots of comments, and I will address those comments at some point in, during the period of the 54 conversations. Will address those. One of the commenters said that we were sponsored by the European Union to be against the Rwandan government, and I'm like, okay, that's a pretty strong statement to make on Twitter. We are not, as you have been following us. We are not sponsored by any government. We're not sponsored by any particular government, whether local, national, international. We are an independent, non-political, non-partisan media entity, and we just are here independent. We speak to the issues. We bring guests to the studio, to the show, to talk about those issues, not about ourselves. And we're not being sponsored by any foreign government, not even the European Union. So when I saw that comment, because of that show we had, I was really just taken aback how people can easily make assumptions. People can easily, generalize things, and sometimes even make open statements that might not even be true. So guard ourselves against that. We are independent. We do not depend on government. We do not seek any foreign interests to promote any foreign interests. We promote the development and progress and improvement of the African citizen on the continent of Africa. That is why the show is here. That is why this platform is here. It's not for any other thing. It's not for government. It's not for, any foreign interest. That's what I said. So, yes, thank you for coming to the show. I'm just waiting now for my guests to join me shortly, and then we can start the show. Welcome to the Africa Desk. This is your platform. You know, this is your platform. Come to the show. You know, you know. Yes, and again, once we get those the guests in, we will begin um, in earnest. We'll start the show. I'm just checking, and thank you, every one of you online. Thank you for um, coming to us, coming to the show. We appreciate your presence. We appreciate everything you're doing as an audience, because your presence alone tells us that you are interested in Africa. You are interested in the discussions. You know, you know. Yes, yeah, yes. Thank you. I'm just trying to make sure everything is going well, and thank you for confirming that the sound is pretty good. We appreciate that feedback. It was something that was concerning to me in the previous episodes, and today it's good to know that it's better. We are doing great. We will work again. This is our first time using this platform, so you in the audience, please bear with us. We will take the time to see how we can make sure the comment section is working properly, because comments are coming in from YouTube, but I don't see any coming from Facebook for whatever reason that might be. So thank you again. This is a new platform we're using. It's 10 o'clock now, um, and we will be starting the show pretty soon. So thank you so much to everyone. Again, this is the Africa Desk, and the conversation today is Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a great country, you know, an amazing country that experienced war, but it is doing an amazing job since after the war. And we applaud the progress made in that country so far. And um, two of the amazing people uh, doing work in that area will be joining us today. So um, you know, stay with us. Stay with us. I'm just waiting here for you know the guests to join me. Stay with us. We really do appreciate your presence here. This is the Africa Desk. If you've been following our postings on a daily, well, not on a daily basis, but with every country that we are discussing before we go live with the guests, we try to give you some sort of information or historical background of the country, how it is doing, when it was established, how things, we do that before the show starts. If you've been following our postings, you realize that actually Sierra Leone has been doing an amazing job since they experienced civil war, and after the civil war, everybody is doing great. Everybody is doing great, meaning the country itself is doing great, and the leadership is doing great, relatively speaking. And we're going to be hearing from two of the guests today to tell us about the work they're doing in Sierra Leone, and how that is having an impact on the people of Sierra Leone. And so we would really love to hear from you as an audience, by way of chat. You could drop your questions on Facebook. I think I'll be able to retrieve those questions from there, because they're not coming through into the system we have right now. But we will try to find them, as those comments come in. Hello, son, looks good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for letting us know that the sound is great. That is what we've been, wanting to hear, because for the past 2 3 weeks, it has been really challenging for us, because we're having serious technical issues. When we came live, so we're having the difficulties with the sound. But today, I'm very glad to hear that the sound is good. Thank you. That is pretty much a very good feedback that I'm hearing there. We are still waiting on the guests. We still waiting on our two guests. I I'm hoping they can join us now. We have no indication they are here yet, but I messaged them that we're waiting for them. And remember, the show is time, so we go by the time we have, because the second hour is going to be coming up as well with a different set of guests who are going to be talking about the nonprofit organization they manage, and they are making an impact in the local community in Sierra Leone, in Freetown, and in other cities across Sierra Leone. That is an amazing work that they are doing. You know, yes, it's an amazing work that they are doing. And so we have just been joined by one of our guests from Sierra Leone, and I'm going to be bringing her on the to the, I'm going to bring her live right now. So while we wait for the other guests to join, um, let me see here. Good afternoon, Mrs. Marcella Sambasisi from Sierra Leone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Semantics. And it's very much exciting to be on your show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm very, very happy and excited to have you on the show. I appreciate the work you're doing, and thank you so much. Okay, I have the
Thank you
second
too.
guest. Okay, I have the second guest. I think he's also on stage here. Let me bring him in so that we can have the two of you and see how we will have a collaborative conversation. Um, Good afternoon, Mr. Jeremy Ben Sember from Freetown. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Semantics. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on your show this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simber. Am I saying the name right? Is it Simbo or Sember?
Simbo.
Thank you. Thank you. And please lower the set. Please lower the volume on your set. I'm receiving some feedback here, just so that our audience can get to hear you loud and clear when you're speaking. Okay?
Is that okay?
Yes, that's better. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome. Viewers, welcome to the show. Listeners, thank you so much for your comments. You have been with me before the guests even arrived. We have our guests now. And please drop your comments in the section on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, and let us know where you're joining us from. And if you have questions from Mr. Sissy or Mr. Simber, please write those questions out for us. We will raise those questions with them so that they can answer those questions for you. But just to start the show, and again, as I was saying, these are two amazing individuals doing great work in Sierra Leone. But before I can start that, we have a segment we usually do, and I'm just going to go through that quickly here. We call it the segment Around Africa. It is about some milestones that have been made on the continent of Africa. And so we start with Sudan. The Sudanese Armed Forces announced the liberation of Al Qamok in Blue Nile State this week, a development both sides say it will shape the wider course of the conflict. And in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Africa CDC says it has warned that the Ebola outbreak there, and in neighboring Uganda, it continues to outpace the response, with more than 1,007 people, confirmed cases and 600 deaths recorded so far. And then in Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast is hosting a second edition of the African Space Solution Trade Show this week, beginning, focusing on technology, and technology leaders going to be around there. And then, since we talk about that, there's another segment called Independence. While we are going around the continent, we also like to mark the calendar. The past week, we celebrated independence anniversaries for Algeria, 64 years free of France as of July 5th, and then Cape Verde, also known as Cape Verde, 49 years free from Portugal, also on July 5th, and then the Comoros Island in Malawi, both marking their independence on July 6th from France and Britain, respectively. And then in South Sudan, they marked 15 years since declaring their independence from Sudan on July 9th, and it's the youngest nation on the continent of Africa. And now, ahead, there are other countries that are going to be celebrating their independence, and we'll talk about those during the next show coming up next week. But on July 12th, Sao Tome and Principe will mark 51 years of independence from Portugal. And to every citizen in each of those nations watching us live right now, that is celebrating those independence or have celebrated, we see you, we hear you, and we celebrate with you. Happy independence to each and every one of you. And now, let's get into the show and the conversation. Like I mentioned, our two guests, they are based in Sierra Leone. And Mrs. Marcella Samba Sisi is the executive director of the Campaign for Good Governance. And Mr. Jeremy Simber is the executive director of the Center for Accountability and the Rule of Law, known as CARL, C-A-R-I-L. And they've already spoken to us. You heard them. So let's start the show by asking each of them this question plainly. I'll start with you, Marcella. The Campaign for Good Governance has been a leading voice on election monitoring and civic oversight in Sierra Leone. Walk us through what your organization is seeing on the ground right now as it relates to that.
Okay, thank you so very much. And I'm so also excited to mention that just the 1st of July, Campaign for Good Governance done 30 years. So it's like 30 years of promoting democracy and civic participation in Sierra Leone. And it has definitely been a journey. It has been a journey of high and lows. It has been a very interesting journey, transformative, but also challenging. Currently on the ground, after the 2023 elections, we are looking at a country, forward-looking at a country of having parameters for reforms on our electoral laws, because as everyone knows around the world and in Sierra Leone, the 2023 elections were contested. And so a number of international actors came together with a peace commission in the country to delineate a pathway for future elections. And this got the blessing of, as I mentioned, several moral guarantors to see that our electoral laws are reformed so that participatory democracy becomes meaningful. So we don't have a situation wherein every electoral cycle we have a case of people who are aggrieved, people feeling dissatisfied that this elections was not transparent and credible enough, So the government, through the Office of the Attorney General, had put forward a constitutional amendment bill. It's now sitting with Parliament. And this constitutional amendment bill is exclusively looking at reforms around the electoral laws to speak to what they call the tripartite committee recommendations, right? And this tripartite committee was actually a kind of peace building and reconciliatory measure after the 2023 elections, where the government of Sierra Leone, the opposition political party, the APC, the All People's Congress, and the International Committee, the three entities, came together to forge a pathway as to how, the issues surrounding the 2023 elections should be addressed. But that process itself is not without challenges, because the citizenry a number of times have called out this process as devoid of citizens' voices. That this has been a tripartite process addressing concerns of the government, concerns of the main opposition party, the perspectives of the international community. But us citizens, the very people who own the democratic process, our voices have been missing in this negotiation.
Wow.
And yes, and so at the moment, when the bill was first laid in January, it was laid in Parliament, citizens called on the Attorney General and Minister of Justice to agree and open up this process so that more inputs, could be made into the bill. And the Attorney General heeded to this concern, and Parliament too. And a number of position papers were submitted to Parliament so that this could be inputted for the purposes of reform. And I think at this very stage, I want to mention that for elections to be credible, respected in Sierra Leone, we have to put forward a process that is not only transparent, but a process that is inclusive of citizens' voices and perception. You see, what the citizens agrees that this is what we want as a people. Because when the citizens agree that this is what we want as a people, then we begin to see what we call democratic ownership. This would foster participation because as a country, to be honest with you, we don't have issue of voter apathy. Sierra Leoneans, because of the history of our recent democratic transition and renewal, Sierra Leoneans are very much interested in decisions as to how to run their country. This is a post-conflict state, just like Liberia is a post-conflict democracy. And for us, in post-conflict democracy, state building and peace building comes in tandem. So it's very critical to have a situation where citizens' voices are at the center. Our democracy was not given on a silver platter. It was not an easy process. My organization, Campaign for Good Governance in 1996, at the heart of the civil conflict, formed a pro-democracy citizens movement. And this entity, this pro-democracy movement, called in 1996, that's 30 years ago, they called for what they said, elections before peace. So the pro-democracy movement invested in the heart of the civil conflicts. Right? You know, they invested in what they believe would transform the nation. That we need to have collective voices around and citizens agreeing to choose who their leader should be. And, you know, to go to the ballot box instead of embracing the barrel of the gun. So our democracy was never on a silver platter. Citizens fought for it, and lives were lost. So even as we consolidate, it is but important that the government of Sierra Leone takes into account citizens' voices as we go through the electoral reform process. And time is not on our side. The next elections are in 2028.
Yes.
So because we normally do 3 elections in one day, the presidential, parliamentary, and local elections for local authorities. So all those elections would happen in 2028. And by the ECOWAS standard, any reform on the legal framework should be done at least 6 months before the elections.
Okay, so we'll come more into detail. Thank you for that opening remark there. Thank you, Marcella. Jeremy, let me flip over to you and ask you. You are you just took over recently, relatively speaking, of CAR, the Center for Accountability. The mandate of that organization centers on accountability and the rule of law. That's the mandate for your organization. How does that work translate into the electoral integrity conversation specifically that Marcella was talking about?
Well, thank you very much again for having me. I am on this call in one of the extreme difficult terrains here in Sierra Leone, in the southern part of Sierra Leone. Currently, I'm out of Freetown. I just rushed up to this venue so that I could just secure a network to just be on this call. Well, semantics, you know, just to add to what Marcella has already stated earlier on, because my CGG and Carl almost, you know, do very similar things. You know, we do things almost in common when it comes to elections. Carl is an institution, of course, that we have worked for over 2 decades here in Sierra Leone. We work largely to promote transparency, accountability, good governance, and the rule of law.
Jeremy, please stick the camera so it's stationary, so it's not straight there. There you go. Just thank you. And I'm so sorry to hear about the challenges you're having. Yeah.
Yeah. Am I good to go?
Yes, you are good to go. Yes.
Good. So we largely work to support good governance, transparency, accountability, and rule of law here in Sierra Leone. So as you stated earlier on, elections, integrity, and credibility, could not just be looked at just in a day. Let's say, for example, just on polling day. It definitely should go beyond that. Let's look at the electoral laws, the laws that we have. We look at our institutions. We expect our institutions to be very much independent, especially the EMBs, the elections management bodies. We want to see a clear independence, being demonstrated by them. Let's say the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone, the Political Parties Regulation Commission, the Sierra Leone Police, and the ONS, and a host of others as well. So what we think at this stage is, yes, we are currently going through a long constitutional review process, which almost spans to almost 2 decades now, if I'm right here. So for us, that we really see that to be a very big obstacle, because progressive laws, strengthen citizens' participation and citizens' inclusion when it comes to elections. But where you have very bad electoral laws, you don't really expect much from the citizenry. So in our case, it's a concern, because the current government, before, when they were in opposition, they started, of course, the SFP government to a large extent started the review of the 1991 Constitution. It started during the tenure of the former late President Ahmad Kaba of blessed memory. It didn't end. It came back to former President Ernest Kuroma. He presented a white paper that was largely way below the expectations of the Sierra Leonean public. And again, we also received another white paper, from this current government. Out of the 184 recommendations that are clearly stated in that white paper, a 608-page report that was done out of 50 and more thousand consultations across the country, with an 80-man committee that was established by former President Nkrumah. Now, the late Justice Kawan of blessed memory also took leadership in producing that report. So out of those recommendations, it would be interesting to note that this current government accepted just 50 out of 184, rejecting 84. Out of 134, rejecting the rest. So for us, it's a serious concern. A constitutional amendment bill has been placed now before Parliament. Again, that's a very serious one. For some people, they think there had been some additions. So they are saying, no, we don't want any addition in this bill. Let's just speak to the Kawan report, because for us, the Kawan report, the Kawan review process traversed the length and breadth of this country. And so much inclusive that, the views in that report reflect the views of the greater percentage of Sierra Leoneans. And at that time, you were in opposition, and you accepted almost all of the views that are stated in that report. Why is it now that you are not rejecting? You are only accepting 50 and rejecting 84. So it's a serious concern to the Sierra Leonean populace. And again, electoral reforms. Yes, we had some electoral reforms before the 2023 general elections. We are still struggling with that, electoral laws. We still peg our elections to that of the census report, so to speak. Sierra Leone is a country that has no national development plan. Any government that comes in will come with their own national development plan. So it's a serious concern. We had a PRSP1, PRSP2 by former president, late president Ahmad Yankaba, Agenda for Prosperity, Agenda for Change, and former Ernest Nkrumah. We've had the new direction of this current administration. They're not talking about the 5 new game changers under this second term or the tenure of the presidency. So it's a concern for us as CSOs. So we are saying it's good that we go back to the Kawan report. Let's have additional, consultations with respect to that report. Let's make it open and very progressive, so that we come to see the views of so many other Sierra Leoneans who were at that time not able to make tangible decisions on their own. So that they will now come to understand that, yes, if we have this constitution, then we'll definitely be moving beyond these issues of just having crisis with the elections.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One critical challenge that we saw, for me, during the just after 2023 elections, we saw a situation where the current opposition party, the APC, decided not to go to court, just because, according to them, they lack confidence in the judiciary. For me, that's a very serious. It's a serious challenge. It's a serious thing to think about. It's a very sad precedent for the poor of this country, where the whole opposition party could now say, we are not going to court because we lack trust in that arm of government. Remember, in our case, the judiciary is one of the arms of government. So if the APC failed, to go to court because they lack confidence in the judiciary, then it's a serious concern. Now, come to think about the 2023 general elections. If we could go again to those to the 2023 elections, and whichever party, you understand, may not come victorious as a result of out of that election, we decide not to participate in governance. So, could we be having another tripartite committee again? Will we be in place again for other development partners to come and engage the two main political parties again? Will we have a situation where some other people will say, no, we're not going to participate in governance, so let's go into another tripartite committee? So it's challenging. It's so very much serious that we need to think about it as a country, and that we need to put politics aside and look at Sierra Leone as just one country that things could be done in the very best interest of all of us. But here, our situation likely dwells on what? Parties and politics. This is a country where our politicians, they think party. Most of them think party rather than country. Most of them think they should be in governance for the rest of their lives. This is a country where those who are in governance today will not want to leave tomorrow, because fearing that, no, if we go, those ones that will come, it will be a winner takes all. They will run after us. They will be establishing commissions of inquiry against us. So those fear and doubts are all over the place. So if they are there, then elections become, our elections now become, a kind of difficult thing to do, where we see state institutions, whose heads are being appointed by the president, as stated under the 1991 Constitution, who may be likely seen to be working in the interest of the government of the day. So for me, it's a serious concern, and it's a major challenge.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for expounding on that there. So I'm hearing from you both that you are having challenges coming mainly from the government, but also from some political parties. Is that right, or am I reading that wrong?
Say again, please.
I'll pose that to Marcella. I'm hearing from Jeremy that the main challenge here is from the government, but then there's also the challenge coming from the political parties too. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our challenge is actually from the political class. It's from the political class. I have always mentioned that we really have a problem of leadership. And so in actual fact, what happens is that the leadership, whether from political parties or the government or state institution, they conscript citizens, right? Who are the biggest enablers, to this bad leadership. And this is the problem. If we have a judiciary that has trust issues, if we have an electoral commission that has trust issues, law enforcement agencies like the Sierra Leone police has issues, then it becomes very difficult for democracy to thrive. Because these are the institutions of the state on which democracy precipitates itself on. These are the engine. Democracy cannot function without the backing of independent, non-partisan institutions. So what is happening in our context is, over the years, even as we build these institutions after the civil conflict to foster citizens' participation, the issue of nepotism and patronage has crept in. So institutions of the state that are otherwise supposed to be independent are largely manned by partisans. And this is not just for one particular government, it's across the board. And so, for example, people believe that when you are head of the Sierra Leone police, for example, you serve the government of the day. So what we have is regime policing. We have regime policing as opposed to a police service that has the sworn mandate to protect the citizens and their properties in the country. So when we have this sort of a double bind situation within our political system, it becomes very problematic.
So that is an issue, though. That is an issue, yes, Marcella, because if the judiciary is not trusted by the citizen and the security system is not trusted, and even then do we have a country as Sierra Leone? What impact is that having on the common man and woman on the streets in Freetown, in Kolaho, in all the areas? How is that really impacting the people?
So that's the point I made earlier on. These are the very people who are conscripted to support, because the campaign message is largely based on ethnic politics, ethnicity. So you have a situation where people begin to believe that because my tribe's person is in power, I feel comfortable. So they give that assurance, and they can definitely see that those who are recruited to serve in the system are basically coming from that tribe. So they have this misdirected and false misnomer that this is our process. But unfortunately, the impact is there, because these circumstances deepen poverty. And poverty knows no party. Poverty knows no face. Poverty knows no tribe. It knows no gender. Neither it knows any religion. When you are poor, you are poor. When we are suffering from the consequences of high transportation, high fuel prices, when we are suffering from situation where democracy cannot deliver on citizens' expectation, it's not for just one category of people, right? It is across the board. The only people who benefit from a system that is otherwise, nepotic are the elites. Those who man the system, they are the ones who benefit from it. And I normally tell them that even if they benefit now, that sort of benefit, what we call benefit, it's not sustainable. After they leave power in the next 5 years, their situation is even worse off than their previous state. Because why? Well, we are not able to build what we call the human capital so that we can be able to deliver collectively as a country. So basically, as I speak to you, and I take the point of Jeremy, because this is part of our campaign currently as we turn 30, we want a national action plan. We are calling on any government, right, that would win election in 2028 to have a non-partisan agenda where we have a national action plan that would speak to, first and foremost, we are talking about basic education, primary school in every village.
Okay.
An equipped primary school in every village. We want access to safe drinking water, access to electricity, and at least we call it one sober hospital in every district. We have 16 electoral districts in this country. If the people can vote, then they have a right to live. But healthcare is a serious concern. So our view of elections is not only about casting of ballots, but also how do we ensure that the votes translate into democratic dividends so that citizens would understand why are they voting in the first place? Because if we take it as a routine exercise every 5 years to cast our ballots, and then we see only few people moving up the it become a social mobility order for just a few set of people, then democracy becomes contentious. That's why elections have become inherently violent, because people now see the space as a space for access to benefit themselves and their cronies. This must stop. This must stop. And that's why accountability institutions such as us are coming together in advance of 2028 to set the agenda that the trajectory of political leadership in this country, right, it needs to change, because it would leave all of us crumbled. We are losing it. We are really losing it. And collectively, we need to mount an advocacy to make sure we go back to the 2002 post-conflict agenda, where we agreed as a country that never again, right, would we see those things happening that would lead us to the situation where we found ourselves in 1991. But we'll have a situation where collectively we can come together and make sure those who are in authority deliver on the expectation of citizens.
Thank you, Marcella. Jeremy, let me go back to you. Let me ask you this question: are you safe where you are? Because I see you are moving around. You're looking around
Yes,
like.
I'm moving just because I want. Yes, I want to be on the call, so I keep
Oh,
moving around just to ensure that the network is strong.
okay, okay,
I'm very
and
okay. I'm safe.
Yeah.
okay. We do really appreciate the sacrifice you're making by doing this, so that the people of Sierra Leone can understand and know what is at stake. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
So I heard the concerns you two are raising here, and it sounds to me like what I read in the papers really is different from what is happening on the ground. This is why we love talking to citizens on the ground in each of the countries in Africa to tell us what is unfolding on the ground, rather than what someone who comes from overseas goes and see and then come back and report it. So if this is the case here, what kind of impact can the international partnership you guys have, or our international organization you're working with, how can those organizations help your local organizations make sure that these reforms you are seeking for are implemented before the elections? I will start with you, with Jeremy.
Okay, good. Then, of course, thanks again, Marcella, for your statements. This is so practical. You know, I keep saying this whenever I have a platform of this nature to talk. Our officials, our government officials, most times do hide under the guise of the 1991 Constitution, because our 1991 Constitution is so much protecting protects the presidency, in the sense that, as you stated earlier on about this, for example, the Inspector General of Police is being appointed by the President of Sierra Leone. The Chief Justice is appointed by the President of Sierra Leone. The Electoral Commissioner appointed by the President of Sierra Leone. Every other person that holds senior position of trust here, his appointment comes from the presidency directly. Now, let's come to think about it. Let's say, for example, the police. The Inspector General of Police is appointed by the President of Sierra Leone, and the Vice President sits at the Police Council as chairman of that council, and the Internal Affairs Minister, who is also a politician and a minister, is the Secretary General of that council. So that's a serious concern. Imagine somebody who appoints you, somebody who has a responsibility to hire and fire you. You understand? Let's come to think about it. We're all human beings. So your allegiance in most of those cases will squarely be or rest, you understand, directly to the person who appoints you. So because our constitution is so much designed in that manner, our political leaders will always say, this is what our constitution says. This is how we have. This is what we have prescribed in our constitution, and we need to go by it. I'm not going to go against the constitution. So that's what we are saying. Let us have a progressive constitution. Because if we now have a progressive constitution, as stated in all of those recommendations, I told you about the 134 recommendations, are against those kinds of things. We do not want to see a situation where, for example, the Attorney General will not be, the Inspector General of Police will not be appointed by the President. No, that's not what we have in this current text that we are pushing for, the revised constitution that we are pushing for. But as long as we continue to have those people being appointed by the President, it becomes very much challenging for all of us as CSOs. Now, come to your question. For us as CSOs here, we are a bit challenged. You now know currently this thing that happened in America, the USAID thing, affected a lot of civil society organizations. Some of our colleagues, some civil society organizations have in fact gone down very low, because it also has to do with this issue of livelihood and sustainability as well. So if you don't have funds, if you don't have regular funds, you understand, to even manage your institution, it becomes very much difficult for you to operate, to even challenge issues. So what we're saying here is we want to have, partnership with people who could really come to Sierra Leone and look at those who think are really working very hard on ground. I didn't reach out to you. I'm sure you must have heard about the work that Carl and CGG are doing in Sierra Leone. So that's the more reason you decided to reach out to us, because you think when talking to us will help you understand the current context with respect to elections here in Sierra Leone. So most times when those organizations come, they work, for example, directly with the government. They go to the government because they want to support the government agenda. And the government now will identify their own people who they think are civil society actors to work with those kinds of organizations, those kinds of development partners. You see, so rather than supporting those very good ones who are on ground, who think the people and not the politicians, becomes so difficult for the existence of some organizations. Then the next thing also is this: our own very protection in so many instances, become at stake. It becomes so much difficult for us to exist. Currently, CAL is challenging NASIT. It's a National Social Security Trust Scheme here in Sierra Leone. We are saying the manner in which NASIT is managing our resources, the monies that are being contributed by in the name of savings by workers here in Sierra Leone, are not properly invested. So what that means, which means the savings of workers in this country are at stake.
Mm-hmm.
It will interest you to know that I have received more than how many 100 calls, people threatening my life, that I want a card is against Nazis, that I'm not interested in this person, blah, 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 and blah. So these are some of the issues that we are being challenged with. And those obsolete laws that we have, let's go back and review or amend or change those laws in entirety. For goodness sake, this is the 21st century that we are in. We still have old laws in Sierra Leone as old as 1861.
Wow.
We still have laws in Sierra Leone as old as 1965. The current Public Order Act that we have in this country is the 1965 Public Order Act.
Wow.
Under that act, you are not required to hold any possession without receiving clearance or whatever permission from the Inspector General of Police. For goodness sake, we are in the 21st century, and we're still operating under a law, under the 1965 Public Order Act, under 1861 Offenses Against the Person Act. We still have 1916 Act in this country. So those laws are draconian. We need to review those laws. Let's have progressive laws. Those laws will help to move this nation. But as long as we continue to have bad laws, those laws are largely in the interest of our politicians. It becomes difficult for us to exist and to even operate as CSOs. Now again, this is a country where most political leaders don't campaign on policies and laws. They campaign on tribes, networks, chronism, and regionalism. Some of them will come and say, hey, here, yes, if you allow these people to come in, they will be wiping your entire generation because they know you are against them. If you send such a message to such a gullible community, for example, that squarely relies on what? On their own son or daughter, who they hold to a very high esteem, they think is among one of the most educated in that particular chiefdom or district. They'll just go by his or her statements. So it becomes difficult for us to go out there and change the mindsets of those people. It's so challenging, it's so difficult. Because the political messages that they send out most times become so terrible. And this idea of winner takes all that is prescribed under the 1991 Constitution. When you become president, you appoint all of your ministers, you appoint all of these, all of those people in those high places of trust. So most times they appoint like 98 to 99% of their appointees become members of their own political party. Politics in Sierra Leone, most people now view it as a way of doing business, as a way of amassing wealth. You understand? So that's why most people in fact spend much more, you understand, in politics than whatever, because they think or know that when the party comes into power, they will kind of be compensated with either fat jobs or better opportunities. So it's becoming difficult for us by the day. Our position, our existence, sometimes even the statement that we make, most politicians do misconstrue it. Very well enough, when they are in opposition, we become their friends. When they are in government, we become their enemies. That's the trajectory here, like in Sierra Leone. Yeah, we have laws. Yes, we have the criminal libel law that has been repealed. That's fine. We have some other very progressive laws. Mind you, Sierra Leone is not where it used to be. It is definitely not where it used to be. But we are moving on a very snail pace, which is not really good for our democracy. We want a Sierra Leone that could be managed or protected by very good laws, progressive laws, for goodness sake. Semantics.
Jeremy, and maybe Masala, you can come here too. What is the general consensus from Sierra Leoneans? Because I'm looking, when you want to, this is really basically changing the constitution, making some amendments of the constitution, right? Is it realistic, given the political landscape in Sierra Leone right now? Is it realistic? Is it possible? Is it timely to make those amendments? Is the citizenship in favor? What is the percentage of those who want it and those who don't want it? I didn't want to interrupt you, Jeremy. You could finish that up, and then I could give Marcel a chance to talk about that as well. Yeah,
exactly. What we need now with respect to to our constitutional review process is the political will. The citizens have spoken. The citizens are saying that go back to the Justice Kawa report. Go back to the report that Justice Kawa presented, because that report contains the views of the greater percentage of this country. And that's where government is saying, no, out of the 134 recommendations that are made in that report, only 50 of those recommendations were accepted by the current government, rejecting 84 in the form of white paper. So the citizens are now saying no. And that's why you've seen, for example, the opposition party. The constitution is currently before parliament. The opposition parties now say, no, we don't want this one. We are not interested in this. But when they were in opposition, they were interested in almost all of those things as well. But now that they are now that they are in government, they are against it. When this current government was in opposition, they said no sooner we come into office, before the first 5 years finishes, we will definitely conclude on this election, on this constitution, everything. The first tenure of this government ended. They only produced us a white paper. Now they are the second and final term. The president keeps assuring us that he will provide us a new constitution. But how inclusive is that going to be? When the amendment is currently before parliament, the day that amendment went to parliament, there was a very serious fiasco in parliament. So which means it's getting difficult by the day. So what we need to ensuring that we have a progressive constitution is just a serious political will. Keeping aside APC, SLPP, PMDC, and whichever P or C or whatever, let's focus on Sierra Leone to be the broader picture. So as long as we continue, to look at Sierra Leone in a partisan order, it will become difficult for us to have a better constitution. But if we look at Sierra Leone to be one country, to be the country for all of us, we want this place to be a better place, then let's go back to that Justice Kawa report and have a revised constitution in that manner. That report is so very good that a greater percentage of Sierra Leoneans are looking forward to seeing that to be in the new constitution I'll be having. So we just need a political will. And when that is lacking, that's where you see people taking the laws into their own hands. That's why you see the high level of lawlessness in Sierra Leone. Because people become aggrieved. They don't trust the institutions. They lack confidence in them. So they take the laws into their own hands. So it's a challenge, it's a serious one.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. Marcella?
I think I want to concur with Jeremy on the position of the constitutional review. 20 years on a constitutional review process is quite long. It's really quite long. The constitutional review is a peace-building recommendation from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report that came out in 2004. So it's a 20-year-old protracted process. And that constitutional review process has seen 3 governments in power. So let me tell you the gimmicks around this. The 1991 Constitution is an enabler for democratic cutbacks. When you are in opposition, you feel the pinch of it, right? But when you are in power, it becomes a protective tendency for the regime that is in power. They use it, the excesses as safeguards. So the laws he spoke about, like the 1965 Public Order Act, it becomes very concerning for the opposition and for civil society. But when you are in power, these are the safeguards you use to keep the citizens silent. So they want it like that. And so the 1991 Constitution is not protecting and safeguarding democracy. It's a very good constitution at a time, but we have gone past that stage. Democracy is not a final destination. It is a process.
Right.
And because it is a process, we must ensure that we have the requisite legal framework that can help hold that process together. And that's the way we see the Constitution. But unfortunately, successive governments, as I did say, want it in that framework. Unfortunately, as it is, we have run out of time. The next government is coming in 2028. And so the current government has been in power for 2 terms, and we thought that they would have made serious strides with the constitutional review. But albeit, the previous government had a highly consultative process. It was so highly consulted, but they failed in the dimension. They woefully failed in making sure those consultations translate into a new constitution. And sadly, in fact, they are the greatest loser in that perspective because they are bearing the brunt of the mishap, the failure to translate that very, very lucid consultation back then, right? In 2016, 2017, 2018, they had the opportunity to do it and they failed to do it. They are now feeling the consequences because bad governance know no bounds. You can benefit from it today, but when you step out of political office, you begin to see the reality of the things we are talking about. Unfortunately, we are having a chilling effect from civil society, and I think Jeremy mentioned that. There's a serious chilling effect because there's so much political attacks, labeling, the very issues that at a very personal level I have called out for the last 20 years, all of a sudden has turned me into an opposition member. And I dare anybody to bring my political party card. It's so unfortunate. So democracy is backsliding in ways that are putting citizens' activism in crisis. And you find out that a number of people are not speaking out. And that doesn't mean, unfortunately, we now have propagandists who are writing all sort of things. We are not saying the government is not doing anything. No, anybody who says any government who comes in power would have its own success stories, right? But the steps we are making are baby steps. The cutbacks are huge. We have challenges in terms of making sure we have the right laws to protect our democracy, and that should start from the supreme law, which is the Constitution, and it will trickle down to other facets. We have the challenge of corruption. We have the challenge of nepotism. You have a number of square pegs in round holes. And these individuals, because they are party stalwarts, they have been made directors overnight. These people cannot necessarily deliver. They have not gone through the rank and file of the leadership to ensure that they are able to deliver on the roles that they have been assigned to. Unfortunately, there are trust issues in major state institutions. And then you begin to wonder, where can we go for redress? We are speaking out, and definitely this is why I see a situation where we can just sit back and reason together. Like, you know what, the Bible, sometimes I preach, because when it gets too much, I then turn to the Bible. Sierra Leone is a very religious society. So you people get to understand perspectives much more when you link it to their faith. So, you know, we have to reason together as a country and forget about this propaganda. If you are hungry and you say you are full, the next minute you will collapse and you will die and faint from hunger. So don't tell me all is well and you know it is not well, when we have the capacity and the opportunity to look inwards and change it. For now, it is not about elections. To be honest with you, it's about safeguarding democracy. Because democracy is not just about elections. We'll go and cast the vote. Somebody will definitely win the election. But we need to have the processes to ensure a free and fair process. One thing I tell people, when you come to power through transparent means, you understand why the citizens vote you in the first place. And then you begin to think about the welfare of the citizens. But when you come into power illegitimately and through alternate means, the citizens are not within your perspective. So it is important that going forward, we make sure that those we recruit for political office come to power thinking of the citizens. And that's why we are pushing for a national development plan, a national agenda. So, for example, if Party A wins 2028 elections, they would have a bite of the National Development Plan is going to be holistic in the sense that it doesn't only have the objectives, but it has milestones and the requisite personnel and other resources that should be able to support that agenda. And when this party comes into power and have a bite, after successive periods, like because it's a 5-year term, if the government changes, another government comes in, we know exactly where the last government stopped, and it becomes a progressive process. And we can even use it as an accountability tool to be able to know exactly what was done during your tenure. But unfortunately, it seems as with every passing government, we are doing things all over again. This issue of electricity, for example, the last regime that started in 2007 and ended in 2018, energy was at the forefront of its development manifesto. Unfortunately, we are still having what we call blackouts. No power supply or limited power supply in major parts of the country. What is the pattern for service delivery? So it's as if we are starting all over again. As we sit in this country, a number of our compatriots are falling ill. Issues relating to their organs, beyond typhoid and malaria, forget it. When it comes to issues relating to organs, it's a crisis.
Wow.
We have to solicit funds from each other, put monies together so that we can send our compatriots to neighboring Ghana for medical care. Why can't we just equip one hospital in this country so that citizens can be able to get medical care in country and save lives? You see, Sierra Leoneans are people who are not asking for much. But these are the things that we talk about and they label us. Bloggers are all over the place attacking our personality, making sure that they make the space so unfriendly for voices and participation. But unfortunately, we will not relent. We will not relent. We will make sure that our voices are heard, because in the final analysis, I drew the trajectory from 1996, right? If it were not for citizens' voices, when the democracy movement stood up to say, enough of the war, enough of the patterns of violence, let's go into election and have a leader who will take this country towards a peaceful era. And that was what we got. So I would implore all those who are speaking out, all the activists, to make sure that we still find our feet and get our voices on board. We
Thank you,
have
Marcella.
a country to build.
Thank you,
Definitely.
Marcella. We have 3 minutes to go, and I got 3 questions for each of you before we go, because the next segment of the show is going to be starting shortly. So, briefly, just brief answers from you will really be appreciated. Maybe 30 seconds each of the questions, because 3 questions, and we got 3 minutes to go. So, what I'm hearing from you is not encouraging me if I'm a Sierra Leonean living abroad, living in the US or Canada or Europe. I'm not being impressed by what I'm hearing, because it's like the government is not making a lot of good things for it to become better for citizens that are there. Then why should I leave the United States and come and live there as a Sierra Leonean citizen? So for Sierra Leoneans who are listening to you and having those concerns, what can you tell them? Each of you, 30 seconds. And then the second question I'm going to be asking is, what progress, if there is any, that the current president has made that you can applaud him for? And then finally, what word, if you have any word to say to the president, if he were listening to you now, would you tell him? 3 questions, 30 seconds each. Let's start with you, Jeremy. If I'm a Sierra Leonean living here and I want to come to Sierra Leone, but I'm discouraged just by what I'm hearing from you, what will you tell them?
Sierra Leone is not the worst place to live on earth. And this Rome, they say, was not built in a day. You, Sierra Leonean, living out of the shores of this land, come to Sierra Leone, you definitely make your mark. Most of the Sierra Leoneans who are living out of the shores of this country do come when it comes to elections. They either come to contest or they want to be voted for. So that's the more reason why we are calling on them to come over to Sierra Leone. Together, we'll all make this place a better place to live. Then to the president, if he's by any means listening to me, the main thing that he should really pay much more attention to at this stage should be national cohesion. Let's have a progressive constitution. Let's go back to the dictates of the Justice Cowan report. Because that report, it encompasses everything.
Okay, I think we lost Jeremy there. Marcella, I'll give you the chance to answer the three questions.
The network. So Sierra Leoneans living abroad, we have a country to build, right? It has to be concerted. It has to be a concerted effort.
Go ahead, Marcella.
We see the role of diasporans in other countries, how they organize, to save the face of the nation. We should also not see the diasporans as part of the problem, because many a times what we have seen in the last few years, diasporas only come for elections. There are good ones who try, but they have so few. They try to see how they can support the development agenda. I mean, there are fantastic ones too, trying to help in the health sector and other areas. But the vast majority of them are coming to participate in politics. What are you bringing? What are you bringing? How are you changing the system? So they should not also be part of the problem. They should be part of fixing and bringing forward. You are coming from developed society. Bring some of the transformation and let's learn from it. But you cannot come and you add to what we are suffering. No, I don't think that's the way to go. The government has done some work. I mean, we can take pride in 2022, the reforms around women's political participation. I can single that every day because that has been a long campaign for like 20 years to ensure that women have a voice. We cannot take 50% of the population and push it aside. They have a voice in the political space. The government introduced the minimum 30% quota in, all of the political discourse that we are having. And even after the 2023 election, so with the impasse, the government was open up to conversation. We want to see them live up to that conversation and be transparent enough to ensure that the reform takes place. That was also a progressive gesture. And there are a couple of other things. They are able to package these things to showcase what they have done as a government. Well, let's try, when it comes to democracy and peace building, let's try and ensure that a lot of investment is put into bringing the society into one social fabric. This issue of reconciliation is critical. Division will not take us anywhere. The issue of revenge as a country will not take us anywhere. If we continue to pluck the eyes of each other, everybody would become blind. Let's be forward looking as a country. Forget about those things that have happened in the past. Invest into peace and reconciliation.
Okay.
And see how.
And the third question, what will you tell the president if we are listening to you?
He has a lot of work to do at this stage. He's in his final stages. He has a lot of work to do. Unfortunately, we don't have a space to dialogue with the president. If I have a space to dialogue with him, I will give him some tips as to what to do, quick fix measures to ensure that we invest in peace and reconciliation, which is critical, and to how to bring the country together. More importantly, the 2028 elections must be done in an open and transparent manner, where people, everybody, we call on a salon in Sierra Leone, we call it Bambaude, openly, so that when somebody lost the election, they know that they have lost it. Nothing should be hidden. Nothing should be opaque. Open the process. Make sure the electoral laws create a level playing field. and let that be the starting point of peace and reconciliation going forward.
Thank you so much, Marcella. Thank you, Jeremy. Sorry, your microphone was having issue. You went up, but we heard you very clearly. Marcella, Jeremy, thank you both for this conversation and for the work you are doing. You're holding institutions accountable in Sierra Leone. That is a commendable work you're doing. Thank you. This is exactly the kind of clear-eyed, in-country perspective this show was built for. The people, the audience that listen to us, this is the kind of thing they like to listen to. Our audience today, thank you also for joining us for the first hour. If today's conversation raised questions for you about Sierra Leone's path to the 2028 election, well, then stay tuned and continue to follow us and let us know how you are feeling. If I could give you just in briefly, because my second guest is already on stage, I would be bringing him in live here. But quickly, I don't want to leave you without saying your final words. Just briefly, less than 30 seconds. I will start, Jeremy. What would you tell Sierra Leoneans and everybody else as your closing remark?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It has been a very nice moment talking to the rest of the world, or to the rest of Sierra Leoneans via your medium. It's a very nice way to communicate. And I want to use the moment to also again talk to Sierra Leoneans out there in the diaspora. Don't present Sierra Leone as if this is the worst place on earth to live. We are not the worst place on earth to live. We may have our challenges, but Sierra Leone is also a very decent place to live as well. Let's try to put Sierra Leone on the map so that investors who may want to come to this country may feel safe and free to come and invest here. Don't present Sierra Leone as if we are in hell on earth. We are definitely not in hell on earth. Thank you very much again for granting me this opportunity to speak to the rest of the Sierra Leoneans out of the shores of Sierra Leone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. Have a good day, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you. Marcella?
Okay, thank you, Semantics. Thank you for the Africa Desk. The show was quite engaging. I would say to all Sierra Leoneans at home and abroad that yes, there are problems, but those problems are not insurmountable. That's why we talk about them. Let's come together and find the solutions for these problems. We have great opportunities. We have a youthful population, right, that we can invest in and use for the transformation. We have natural resources that have not served us right in the last 65 years. How can we transform that? We really have Sierra Leoneans who are very intelligent. They are making marks in the global stage. How can we harness those opportunities to transform and build our country? It is difficult at the moment, but it is not insurmountable. We can do it. Can we come together and do it? That is my word to all of you. Let's do it together.
Thank you, Marcella. This was wonderful. And thank you for the great job you're doing. We consider you special to this show, and on this show, we appreciate what you're doing, and you are welcome anytime. If you have anything to say to Sierra Leoneans and the world, this is your platform for you. Thank you, and you have a great weekend.
A great weekend to you all. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Okay. So you just heard that fantastic conversation with Marcella and Jeremy live from Freetown. Now, that is what the first hour is made for. It is not for any different thing other than discussing the politics of the country. So don't go anywhere. Stay with us, because in the hour two, the second hour, we got a different guest for you. But before I can bring my guest on stage, I'd like to use this opportunity to tell my audience and the world that one of our guests that was supposed to be on the show today lost her dad. Just this morning, she received news that her father passed away. Dr. Raymond Chanka, we are sorry for losing you. We send our condolences to your daughter and the family and everybody. And we are keeping you in our prayers. We hope the family takes solace in the work that the late dad has done, and the children continue to do. So our condolences to the family. His daughter was supposed to be on the show today with our next guest, but she couldn't make it because she received that late news this morning of the passing of her dad. So our condolences to her. And so this is welcome back to the Africa Desk. This is the second hour on the episode, and this is episode 8 of 54 conversations. This is where we discuss each of the African countries. Today, the spotlight was on Sierra Leone. Well, it still is. It was Sierra Leone. If you just join us in our one, we dock into electoral integrity and what reforms Sierra Leone needs ahead of the 2028 elections. Now, for our two, we are shifting gears to talk about grassroots diaspora-led development and the people doing that work on the ground here with us in this hour. It's just going to be one person. So I will be welcoming Dustin Montgomery, who is a board member of the nonprofit we're going to be talking about this afternoon. So I'm going to be welcoming Dustin on the stage right now. Dustin, welcome to the Africa Desk.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And again, please share our condolences with I'm sorry, I don't want to say the first name wrong. How do you pronounce our first name?
I believe Vidya.
Vidya, yes. Please extend our condolences to Vidya and her family. We
Certainly.
are so sorry for her loss.
Certainly.
Good. Now, we were hoping to have her, but because she lost her dad, we cannot have her. So the discussion is going to be only with Dustin this afternoon. So we will focus our conversation with Dustin. But before we get into the role that Dustin plays, we wanted to see to understand basically what this organization is, because again, Vida is not going to be with us, so we may not talk much about her position here. But for anyone that is hearing about the organizations you lead, can you tell us exactly what this organization is and what it does? Anyone who hears about it for the first time, what is this organization about and what does it do?
Absolutely. So SLFND stands for Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy, and it was started by Hindalo Pokawa, Vidya's husband. And the main goal was to kind of bring people back to the connectedness of their communities as well as within the natural world. And it's very much rooted in the practice of permaculture, which is an agriculture practice where you work with the land rather than against. I think a lot, at least in my life growing up here in America, we see a lot of practices of monoculture, single crop farming that, you kind of are extracting from the land year after year rather than working with the land. And so Hindalo kind of took these ethics and principles of permaculture and expanded it well beyond just farming practices into the community. And, the goal in the beginning and still today is really trying to work in partnership with communities to build this foundation that allows all members of those communities to create like new alternatives that nurture democratic relationships. I think one of the things that I have seen myself in my own experience, and Hindalo has talked about, is within his home community of Mandima, is Sierra Leone is primarily youth. It's a lot of people 30 and younger. I would say a large portion of the entire country is young people. And what's happening is all these young people are moving away from their villages to the city, to Freetown, to the outskirts, looking for work. And again, I can only speak on my experience of what I've seen being on the ground there, but there is not much opportunity. So then all of a sudden you have this influx of all these youth who are trying to come to the city for opportunity. There's no opportunity that exists. So what SLFND is trying to do is reinvoke this mentality and this mindset that the opportunity actually exists and lies within your home communities through the practices of agriculture, through the practices of social enterprises, things like creating a preschool, which Hindalo did, which is called Dovalema Early Childhood Co-op. And kind of through these practices, it's kind of reshaping the mindset of, individuals and more on the broad base of the communities on how we can begin to see the opportunities that exist within our homes rather than looking elsewhere for outside opportunity, whether it be Freetown, whether it be Western organizations, and kind of just realizing the power that we have within ourselves and within the community members to build a strong future that allows for, peace and democratic decisions and do things that aren't exploitative. Again, I talked about earlier my experience growing up and seeing, growing up in Minnesota, seeing a lot of monoculture. You see all these farms and it's just fields of corn, single crop, versus in the village of Mandima, you go there and you see all kinds of different crops being grown, pineapples, watermelons, all different fruit trees, and it all works within itself, not only to benefit the other crops, but to benefit the community, to benefit the school. Everything works together in this whole connected organization that allows everything to kind of grow together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that opening statement. So just taking a look, and I was reading through the documentations you guys shared with me. I was wondering, the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy. The name itself is very rightly captured. It's impressive to have that kind of name. So, how did this foundation come together? How did each of you personally get involved? Because I see that Hindelo is the I think the founder or the president. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us today, but you are involved with the work here. How did each of you come together? How did it get personally started?
Yeah, so I always love telling this story. So it was 2019. So I was a senior in college. And during that senior year in the fall semester, I took a program called HECUA. And what HECUA does is it creates essentially study away program. So it wasn't like a study abroad program where I was traveling abroad to a different country and studying in a foreign country. Instead, I was just studying away from my university. Our focus was on environmental injustice, and we were specifically looking at the northern corridor of Minneapolis, North Minneapolis, and kind of drawing connections between pollutant companies that existed within North Minneapolis and the disparity that existed between opportunities for food, opportunities for natural spaces, and kind of just putting ourselves within that community to learn from the members of that community about, the issues that they face, the work that they're doing. And so during that time, Hindelo was one of my professors. And I think very early on, I think him and I, hit it off. I remember part of that program is we used to go out to a farm in western Wisconsin that was practicing permaculture at the time. And we would do a couple overnight visits throughout that fall semester. And there's one memory I have where when we stayed overnight at that farm, a lot of people stayed in the farmhouse. And then there was this little small building right outside, and they were growing hemp. They were growing hemp plants. And it was at the time of the year where they were harvesting those hemp plants. And part of the process is you cut them at the base and then you hang them upside down. And so there's 2 couches in there. And I remember me and Hindelo decided to sleep in that room. And so that evening, we sat up for probably a couple hours, him telling me about his work in Sierra Leone and, me just trying to take everything in and learn as much as I could. My mother often tells me I'm like a sponge. I take in as much information as I can. And part of it's just because I love to learn. I'm fascinated by learning all types of things. But that night, me and Hindelo sat there for about 3 hours before he fell asleep underneath all these massive hemp plants. And he told me that he runs this organization in Sierra Leone, and he does what are called circle trips. And those circle trips every year would run in January, and they would take college students on essentially like a 2-week tour of Sierra Leone to come see his home, see the work Sierra Leone's doing, or Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy is doing, and just do some sightseeing around the country. And so I took the opportunity. I was, I think from the first time he even spoke about it, I was like, I'm going to find a way to make this happen. So I went there to Sierra Leone in January of 2020. And that was my first experience outside the United States. It was my first country I'd ever been to. And it was, to say it was a transformative experience, is very true, but it's just, one of those things that we all have those moments in life where there's these experiences that truly shape the way you think, the way you see, and just like moves everything forward in a different direction. And that experience definitely did that. So I was there for 2 weeks, and then I get back to the US, and we all know kind of what happened in March of 2020, both in the US and all over the world, with COVID breaking out. So then everything starts happening with COVID, and everything was shut down, and Hindelo reached out to me about a opportunity to work with him on a farm in St. Paul, Minnesota. So that summer of 2020, Hindelo and I were managing a farm in a community called Frogtown. And so him and I spent the entire summer together farming. And it, again, was one of those experiences where, this man went from being like a professor to me to then slowly becoming, I think this man is kind of my friend. And, now it's, he's someone I truly consider a best friend and a brother to me. And also during that time is when Minneapolis saw the murder of George Floyd. And at the time I lived, I would say, no more than 1 mile from the precinct in South Minneapolis. So I was like right there kind of at ground zero of this whole thing. And, most nights I would spend down on the streets witnessing what was happening from the ground and, hearing perspectives from community members and, just taking it all in. And my ideology and perspective always, especially when those types of things happen, is I was not to sit at home and kind of gain information from whatever I saw on my phone or the TV or whatever it is. I wanted to be there in person and gain my own perspective with my own eyes. Similar to my experiences in traveling, I've gotten a million questions when I tell people I go to Sierra Leone. You get all the questions of, is it safe? Why do you go there? This, that, and the other thing. And it's just one of those things, West Africa, Sierra Leone, Africa as a whole, until you go there and you personally see it with your own eyes and you personally experience it, there aren't really words you can say to express the experience that is there. And so during that time, Hindalo and I are working on this farm and we're watching this whole city collapse around us, and I say collapse in some senses. In some aspects it was collapsing, but also what we saw is the community of Minneapolis completely come together and rise up against, these injustices that we were seeing. And two, with George Floyd, that was not like a one-off situation. Minneapolis has been, and St. Paul have been at the forefront of a lot of this police brutality that we've seen throughout, the recent decade with Philando Castile in 2016, Jamar Clark. I know Michael Brown was down in Ferguson. This has been going on for ever and ever, but especially within recent times. And now, as of recently with in 2026, when we saw the immigration ICE come into Minneapolis and murder a couple people, it's, for some reason or another, Minneapolis has kind of been on ground zero and in the forefront of these massive civil injustice movements that have happened throughout our nation. And so during that summer, Hindalo and I are working at this farm, and one day I get there and he shows me this Facebook live stream, and it's this man by the name of Terry Willis who's walking from Alabama to Minneapolis to raise awareness about police brutality. And Hindalo was, watching this stream and watching this man cross the country on foot day after day, and he told me, he's like, I want to do something like this. And so at the time, I found, towards the end of college, I was starting to get really interested in documentation in terms of documenting my own story, but I also was becoming very, I guess you can say in many ways, critical and skeptical of large media sources. I grew up watching the news often and kind of found it as a source of information. And not that I don't anymore, but I think the landscape of what we see as media, or at least I do in my own experience, is changing very much so, from these massive news conglomerates to a lot of more smaller boots on the ground journalists. And so I had just bought a GoPro at the time, and Hindalo presented this idea of going back to Sierra Leone and creating a project with all the ideologies, with all the visions and intentions of Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy, but expanding and creating this project that is Walk for a Child, in which we would go and engage with these communities all throughout the country, walking on foot and hearing stories from different people about the issues that are faced primarily by women and children throughout the country. So I know that's not the short answer to it, but that kind of gives at least a little scope into how I ever got to Sierra Leone in the first place.
The context is helpful, Dustin. Is really, really helpful. And after you name all those tragic incidents involving George Floyd and other people, I'm wondering though, and maybe you can say maybe more about it here and tell me if I'm wrong here, but because of these incidents that you've seen, you, Hindalo, and the other partner, I'm wondering, what does that name, New Democracy? What does it mean in the context of the work you're doing. It's a striking name for an organization focused on children and the community development. But then you mentioned all these incidents as some sort of incidents that might have even inspired maybe one or two individuals to think about something about this nature. New democracy. What does that name mean in terms of the country itself, Sierra Leone?
Yeah, I think within what I have seen within Sierra Leone, the conversations that Hindle and I have talked about, this whole idea of new democracy, it's transforming this idea and mindset of what Hindle is specifically seen of as extractive and exploitative practices. Most people from where I've grown up from in my community, you hear Sierra Leone and people think of one thing, and they think of diamonds. They think of extracting from the land. They think of all these aid organizations over there, all these things that, I think on the cuff of their sleeve show that, hey, we're here to do good work, but underneath the cover, and once you pull back the curtain, it's like they're actually extracting and exploiting not only the land, not only the environment, but they're exploiting the greatest resource, I think, is within Sierra Leone and Africa as a whole, which is the people. And using them for whether it be, growth of an organization or a government agency or things like that. And so with this idea of new democracy, it, puts into place this idea of deliberate and intentional decision making, giving everyone within the community a voice, a purpose, and allowing people to have power within the things that they believe, within their ideas, and hearing all that together. And I think there's so many different ways to do that. And like I talked about a little bit within SLF&D, the projects have been through permaculture, through the Dovalema preschool, now through a project which is Walk for a Child, and giving youth the opportunity to do something different that they haven't done before, and giving them advocacy to allow for their voices and, their ideas to not only be shared, but to be heard and digested by, members of their community.
There's a question I have for you on the particular segment of the work you're doing. I have questions for your partner, who I'm going to leave those aside because she's not available. But there's a video you share with me I saw, and again, permit me, please, and even the audience, because it's my first time using this platform here. I could get something wrong here, but let me play that video, and I'm going to ask. I was really moved when I saw that video. I'm like, wow, I could not believe this happening. So let me see. Present, I believe. Yeah, I think I'm supposed to present. Present a video. Yes, let me see. Okay, that is not going to come from there. So maybe share. Okay, yeah, share screen. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share screen. Someone might be typing. I'm hearing some typing going on there, but right here. Yes, let me share this. I'm going to. Do you see my screen, Dustin?
I do not. I just see you.
You just see me?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see whether it's going to share it. Okay. Oh, I need to put it on stage right there. Do you see that now?
Yep, I see it.
Okay, good. So I'm going to try again. I'm going to try this here. I've never done this, but I'm going to try and play it.
Happened in
Can
June
you hear the
of
sound?
2020. Khadija Sakau, a 5-year-old girl from Sierra Leone, was raped and strangled to death by her older cousin.
This horrific situation called international attention to rape and violence against girls and women in Sierra Leone.
It was reported that the country had more than 8,500 cases of sexual assault and gender-based violence per year. 70% of survivors are under the age of 15.
It's problems like these that the Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy is collaborating with different organizations to address in Sierra Leone. At the start of 2021, SLF&D's founder Hindolo Pokawa and his friend Dustin Montgomery walked 315 miles from Kailahun to Freetown to draw attention to the heartless attack on girls and women in Sierra Leone.
The pair was crowned He for She champions as a part of the UN Women's He for She Global Campaign and Solidarity Movement. Starting in November, Pakawa will be embarking on a longer walk at the request of local communities.
520 miles to be exact. We will be using the walk to carry out research on rape culture and to fundraise for training programs to end violence and teach masculinity without violence to young boys in Sierra Leone schools.
This would be near impossible without the hard work and intellectual support of a dedicated team.
Okay. Did you see it? Did you hear it?
Yep, I heard all
Good.
that.
Good. That I watched that and I'm like, what in the world? Can you say more about that and the work you particularly are involved with that segment of the I think that's a project, if you will, you know?
Yeah. I think when there's a couple things. One, I think Hindalo is a bit crazy, and that's why I love him. When I first met him, the thing that struck me is, I finally felt like I had met someone who has ideas and dreams that are so big that makes other people uncomfortable. And I think, especially through college and even now, I'm 28, and I still feel that at times that, my friends know me to constantly have all these ideas. And sometimes there's these big, lofty ideas. And so then meeting Hindalo, he's like, let's walk 315 miles. And then all of a sudden we do it. And he's like, let's do 540 miles. I'm like, you are crazy. But there's no one else that I know that would have these ideas and also pull them off alongside me. And so, he came to me when we were on that farm in Frogtown in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we saw that man, Terry Wills, walking from Alabama to Minneapolis. And he said, I want to do a walk in Sierra Leone. And he's like, there's all these different things that we could walk about and on. And, he shared me that video of Khadija Sako, the 5-year-old girl who was raped and killed by her cousin. And he's like, this issue of rape and sexual violence is completely devastating the landscape of Sierra Leone. And it's completely taking away the childhood from all these children. And, it wasn't really until our second walk, the 540 mile, when we were sitting in Freetown, kind of in the eastern part of the city, that I told him kind of my story of, parts of my own childhood where this idea of sexual violence really impacted my own childhood. And I had a personal connection to this. And so it was really interesting to me that all of a sudden then this opportunity gets presented to me, to not only speak up and out about this, but to do something, to do a silent protest in which we would walk village to village. And along the way, we would create space for women and children to come together and share about their experiences. And this idea of masculinity, this is one that I have, very much dove into and tried to explore on my own. I was raised by a single mother for most of my life. And, throughout my life, I can name so many different women in my life, whether it be teachers, family members, my mother, my grandmother, my good friends now, that are all just super strong, incredible women who have totally raised me up to be the man I am today. And so when we started this walk, it was one of those that we went over there with nothing more than an idea and kind of a dream of what we wanted to do. We wanted to start in the eastern part of the country of Kailan, and we wanted to walk the entire length of the country, Kailan to Freetown. And along the way, we would go village to village, and we would not stay in guest houses. We would not stay in hotels. Instead, we would rely on the indigenous tradition, as Hindalo spoke about, that exists within Sierra Leone, where you can show up to a village and you can present yourself to the chief and you can explain to them, what you are doing, and ask if we can stay within those communities. And every single place we went, we were completely welcomed with open arms. We were given homes to stay in. We were given water. We were given food. And each of those villages, we would hold these community ceremonies. And in these community ceremonies, we would share about our idea and what we were doing. Why are we walking? Well, we're walking to raise awareness against sexual gender-based violence, specifically against women and children. But the thing that I always emphasize is that our goal then and now has never been to go to Sierra Leone or go to these communities and ever tell any member of the community or just people in the country that this is how you should be doing things. Instead, I'm going there because I want to learn from Sierra Leone. You know, in our last hour segment, one of the things that you asked the guests there was, you know, what's something you want to share about, you know, Sierra Leone to the world? And I believe Jeremy was his name, and he said something about just, you know, putting Sierra Leone on the map. And to me, that's the one thing is, you know, I tell people I go to Sierra Leone and there's this laundry list of questions of everything kind of having negative connotations. And again, until you go there, you won't really see it or experience. But, you know, the experiences I've had there in these communities, walking on foot hundreds of miles, the world has so much that it can learn from Sierra Leone. And specifically with this issue of violence against women and children, this is not just an issue in Sierra Leone. This is a global issue. I mean, it's everywhere, you know. Exploitative practices, sexual violence, all these things, it's in every corner of the world. And so having it be that Sierra Leone can kind of be the leader in these conversations, specifically with young men, you know, I think can very much, the world can learn so much from these communities.
And how much of an impact is this having on, because to admit, when I understand, not that I condone it, even speaking of it, but the fact that it is at a level of that age of that young kid, just that young little girl. I mean, it was so heartbreaking to see that. What impact is that having? The work you're doing is what I mean. What impact is that having on the community in Sierra Leone? Are people aware of it? Are they appreciating it? You know, how is that going?
Yeah, so this is something that personally, I think I struggled a little bit in our first two walks. So our first walk, 315 miles, we do the whole walk. We gain a lot of media attention. It's super great, super cool. We get back to Freetown. We're invited on national news. We get awards from the United Nations, this, that, and the other thing. Now, all that, cool experience. But does any of it really matter, all the accolades? No, because that's not the purpose. It doesn't matter about us. It's more raising up and lifting those voices. So then we did our second walk, going around the whole perimeter of the country, 540 miles. And the one thing I did struggle with is when we were there in those communities, when we would hold those community ceremonies and we would give space to the women and children to share about their experiences and invite the men to just come and listen and hear out the women from their community. In addition to that, we would always wash the feet of the women. And this was kind of a symbolic practice that we did, washing away the wrongs that were committed by men to women in this community and just globally. You know, and oftentimes we'd invite men from the community to do so, to come and wash the feet of the women. And some communities we were well received, other communities not so much. I think the women always got a very big kick out of it. It was always something that, you know, would bring a lot of smiles and laughter. You know, and I always talk about in the places that I've traveled, there's a few things that transcend language, you know, because that's our primary form of communication as humans. So then when you're in these locations, in these communities where you can't speak the same language, how do you begin to communicate with each other? And through these community ceremonies that we held, you know, smiles and laughter, and this shared understanding of, you know, peace and happiness, you know, those were the forms of communication that we were able to build through these different events. But the one thing that kept kind of dawning on my mind is, okay, are we having an impact? We come to this community, we're there for a day, we have a conversation, and then we're on to the next community. Are we really having an impact? So then comes our third walk in 2024, where we expanded into Liberia. We started in Monrovia, crossed the border in southern Sierra Leone, and made our way all the way up to Bo. This was also the first time that I had someone other than myself from the U.S. I had my good friend and brother, Matthew Sweetman, who joined me on this walk. And during this walk in 2024, the thing that really changed was we invited youth from the country of Sierra Leone to come and join the program. And it was all free of cost. We provided all the housing in form of tents, the transportation, and all the food. And throughout the walk, you know, we would have days where we would walk 7-8 miles, and then we'd have days where we would walk 20 miles, and then we even had a few days where we'd walk 30 plus miles, you know, very challenging things. But there was one specific night on the border of Sierra Leone and Liberia. We were on the Liberian side, and we had a group reflection. We kind of reached a halfway point where, we're getting towards the end of Liberia. We're crossing back into Sierra Leone in the morning. So we went around that evening as we were sitting and eating our plates of cassava leaf. And I just asked everyone, I said, just share one thing about your experience so far. And so we went around the circle, and we had a wide range of young people from Sierra Leone, anywhere from the ages of, I would say, 17, 18, upwards of 30 to 35. And as we went around the circle, the things that were shared were things such as, I have never been outside my home country. I never knew what Liberian people were like, but now that I have met them, I realize they're the exact same as us. We're the same people. There was a young man, Sovila, who came from a community and was in university at the time. And he said, he's like, this is inspiring me to do a walk within my own home community. And so it kind of clicked in my mind. And I told my brother Matthew this. I said, I think we just figured out how we make an impact doing this walk. And kind of the transition is we continue doing the things we do, where we go into these communities, we hold these community ceremonies, we give space to the women. But as we continue to expand, the real impact is had is by inviting youth into this program completely free of cost, and giving them access to do something not only physically challenging, but also mentally challenging, spiritually challenging, but also giving them an opportunity to see different parts of their country, see different parts of West Africa, and see these types of issues that, they know exist within their home communities and their own villages, but seeing how these things are, also being played out in these different communities. And so how we have an impact, my real answer at this point is our primary goal is to empower women and children, and ultimately we want to inspire young people. That is our goal with Walk for a Child, is doing these expeditions, hearing the voices of survivors, but in the real attempt of how do we inspire young people. And I think that inspiration that we can create and provide to these young people, I think that can go further than any kind of monetary program that you could build, or fundraising campaign, or anything like that. If you inspire a young kid, one of these young kids will grow up to be a doctor, or, some of them might, as we were talking about the election in 2028, it's like they might grow up and want to be part of the change that is the next generation of Sierra Leone. So that's kind of our vision and what we're aiming for moving forward.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, the link you share with me, those documents, I'm going to play one more video. I think it's a little bit long, but I might cut it short at some point. But let me share it again, just for my audience to see what we're talking about here, because you explain, again, it's a new platform. I wasn't able to upload all the overlays and things like those. So I got to go strictly to the site and then try and find that. Present, yes. Oh, no, not present. Share my screen. Yes, I'm going to share my screen on, let me see where this is. Quickly here, audience, bear with me. Let me see if I can find this. I think this should be it. Yes, I think this should be it. Share. It's on the.
Signboard, and this is the beginning of our project and on the land that we're working in. If you come, I'll give you a tour guide of what we are doing so far with High Progressive Land. Because this is and we're asking for people to allocate to us land. We always ask for the land to be near water. The reason being, I'll just show you downstairs when we go why we ask people to allocate this land, because I have to keep saying allocation, because they don't. The land doesn't belong to SLFND. The land belongs to the community. So these pipes that you see lying on the floor, they're all over the land. These pipes, these black pipes, they're all over the farm. So this solar panel, this water well here that you see, this will a machine at the bottom of this water well. So this machine brings up the water, and then the water gets filtered in here. And this is powered by solar panel. So the previous solar panel is there, and the solar panel is powered by the sun, and then you produce the water from the earth, and then you bring it into this machine, and then you filtered it. And when you filtered it, the water goes through this pipe. It goes through this pipe all the way to the top of the farm. So if you come with me, I'll show you where this water comes from and where it ends up. See the water? That's the water that was coming from down here. How it's gonna get it out. So we are asking Sierra Leoneans who are abroad, home and abroad, not only in the diaspora, Sierra Leoneans who are home, who feel the needs that this cause is relevant within our community, to come on board and support us. You understand? That's what we
What's the role again? General
UK
Manager,
Director of Sierra Leone Foundation for New Democracy.
This is the flag production, the CEO of the flag production.
Okay, I'm gonna stop that. So I could barely hear clearly what she was saying because they record the word. But for my audience to understand, can you say in detail what this was about? What was she explaining? You are on mute, Dustin. You mute yourself. So
There we go. Now I'm back.
yeah.
So that video that she was walking on the land where the Dovalema Early Childhood Preschool sits, which is in the village of Mandima in the northeast region of Sierra Leone. And again, I talked earlier about this idea of permaculture, an agriculture practice that works with the land rather than against it. And part of that idea of permaculture, not only just in the agriculture practice, but as a lifestyle, is using the land in a way that benefits not only all the vegetation that you're growing, but it creates an environment and a space where the children who go to school there not only learn on that land, but they grow their own food and are nourished by the fruits of the land on the land in which they learn. And so there's different practices put in place in terms of wells and different pumps and things like that that were then put into holding tanks. But part of the preschool education that was provided there was teaching these young kids how to build a connection with the land and how to grow their own food. And then they would harvest that food and they would eat the food during school that they grew themselves. And so that video highlighted just kind of some of those practices and the different things that were being done on site there.
Okay, thank you. Now you are sitting on the board. You are part of the board of directors, and so you understand more about what this organization does. Just in terms of statistics, do you have an idea roughly, for instance, how many girls you guys have helped or how many young boys you guys have taught to have a knowledge and understanding of sexual violence? I mean, any numbers you could put together for my audience to understand how those are?
For sure. And these, I will just say, these are very rough estimates that I have, just again, based on my own experience of being there, being on the board and things like that. In terms of the preschool that was built and runs in the community of Mandima, there have been hundreds of children from that community that have gone through that school, graduated, and had an opportunity to get an early childhood education. And at least to my understanding, at least in the villages of that area within Sierra Leone, kids oftentimes don't go to primary school till the ages of 6, 7, even 8. And what the preschool did is it would get the kids into school by ages 3, 4, and 5, essentially putting them a couple years ahead into basic learning, mass critical literacy, giving them these kind of foundational skills so that you enter into primary school with a foundation already built underneath you. And so within Mandima and that community, there have been hundreds of students. And also beyond just the students, the community itself has been impacted by that. So I would say, Mandima as a whole has been very much impacted very positively by that experience. And then in terms of Walk for a Child, it's hard to quantify the number of, young people, women, children, and even men that we have had an impact on. Our first walk, which brought us from the very eastern part of the country, Kailan, all the way to Freetown, was 315 miles. And through that, we passed through somewhere between about 20 to 25 different communities. And in each of those communities, we would hold those community ceremonies. And each of those would bring anywhere from 20 to 30, upwards of 50 to 75 people from those communities that would join and have these conversations. Then on our 540-mile walk, which took about 40 days or so, we hit somewhere in the range, I would say, between 30 and 35 communities going all around the country. Some of those communities, they were our second visit. So I would say, estimating in terms of impact that we've had through Walk for a Child, it has been well over the thousands of people that, have participated in our community gatherings, but very direct impacts, that 2024 expedition is the one I really hold on to, where we had about 30 young people join, and just going through that experience together as a team. Many of us were strangers before we even started it. Myself with them, and even them as, young kids coming from different parts of the country, and I think as we expand forward, that impact will only grow. And what our goal and intention is to really kind of fine tune, how do we have an impact, but how do we not just have a short-term impact, but how do we have one that's long-standing and can carry well beyond each walk.
Impressive, really, really impressive. And I was listening to those numbers, those communities. I mean, it's challenging, but you and your team are really doing an amazing job there. Thanks to you, to Hindalo and Vika. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the name right. Yeah, you guys are doing a great job there. But thank you. And you've also coordinated these, 3 of these walks in January 2021, in November 2021 as well, and then January 2024. And I think you talk a little bit about that. So those are all amazing things you guys have been doing for the right reasons. You want to create awareness, you want to share some light, to the community, to the nation about these things that are happening on the camp there. In the country. So what's the most memorable moment from any of the 3 expeditions you've had? If there is any particular moment that you cherish that has stayed with you till today, what would that be?
Yeah, I talked about a little bit about that reflection that we had on the border of
Liberia
to Sierra Leone. That was one for sure. But I think let me think here.
Okay.
I think that first walk, the 315 mile, it was something so new, something that the whole experience as a whole, not just any one specific moment, but when we would start in Kailan and we would walk 14, 15 miles to the next village, and people would see me and Hindalo walking, and they would call me Pumwi, which is white man in Mendi. So they would yell out to me. They're like, Pumwi, what are you doing? And I would be like, we're walking. And they're like, why are you walking? And so as we would walk, they'd be like, why are you walking? And then we would tell them, we're walking to Freetown. And they're like, oh, you're crazy. You'll never make it. And so as we continued on, night by night, village by village, we could notice a significant change. And by the time we got to Bo, and then we went from Bo and kind of shot to the north, you could tell people were starting to become aware and know that these 2 men there walking across the country, they're coming into our village next. And by the end of it, there was this sense of momentum and people that were wanting to join us for the walk. We would have a couple, there was one day that we had probably about 20 or so young boys who walked with us probably about 10, 15 miles from one village to the next. And along the way, we would just have people join along, whether it would be the walk or when we'd be in those communities, and just very much be interested in what we were doing, but then be very actively engaged in those conversations. You know, there's so many different elements and pieces that kind of put together this whole puzzle that is Walk for a Child. Of, you know, we walk these long distances, but then we get to the communities, and then we have these community ceremonies, but then we also sleep right in the communities. We're not staying in guest houses. We're not staying in hotels. We are right in the midst of the community. You know, we're using local houses to sleep in their beds, or, you know, the auntie from the house down the way is cooking cassava leaf, which I eat every single night. That's probably one of the big reasons I go back to Sierra Leone, is because I love the cassava leaf so much. But, you know, I think, and two, out of that personally, is that experience, you know, gave me not only a mentor in Hindalo, but it gave me a friend, a brother, and just this adult male role model that I feel like in my own life I never really had. You know, I grew up with a single mother, and I never really had a strong male role model in my life. And Hindalo has always been someone that any idea I present to him, any, you know, with documenting all these walks, all of our walks have been completely filmed and are online. And he has been the one always to tell me, it's like, no matter what, you need to continue doing this, continue documenting, and continue putting these videos out. You know, so just have another man in my life that is so supportive and believing in me, I think has been, it's been a special thing that I've had the opportunity of experiencing.
Okay. That's good. I know we have 5 minutes to go, and I do respect all our guests when they come to the show. I respect their time. So, but I got a few more questions to ask you. I hope we can slot them in briefly. So in the next 5 minutes, you are planning a 4th walk in January 2027. This time you're going to be addressing the impact of the Yenga border conflict and women and children. Tell us about that decision. Why 2027, and why is this particular focus of interest?
Yeah, so 2027, you know, in the last couple years, we have been talking about doing another walk, and we've been talking about where do we put our focus area. And, you know, we've done the first couple walks specifically on sexual gender-based violence. I think we've expanded to be a little more broad-based of our goal is to empower women and children. And throughout that process, we will look into different issues directly faced by the communities we walk through. And just as recently, within a couple of weeks, Hindalo made me aware to this border conflict in the village of Yenga, right along the Yenga border, where Guinea had put military forces back in 2002 to support the Sierra Leone forces against the rebels coming during the Civil War. But then Guinea never left. And you know, I think this all goes hand in hand of with this border being an area that so many people from Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia cross every single day, and there being these types of conflicts that exist right in that region, it's creating a roadblock for the development of children, of women in that area. And furthermore, it's like, how does that continue to aid and abet in the ongoing issues of sexual violence in that region? You know, how does a border conflict and this militarization of a, you know, peaceful community kind of flare up these other issues? And so our plan is to start in Kenema and walk about 100 miles to that border and finish in that border, and hopefully have some really good conversations along the way about the impacts that are being faced by those communities directly around sexual gender-based violence, but more so how that border conflict and the way it's been handled by the government rather than the community is impacting those people.
Okay, and as we actually start to wrap up things here, what does your foundation need the most right now? Is it volunteers? Is it funding? Is it awareness? Is it partnership? What would move the needle exactly?
The number one thing that would move the needle for the organization is partnership. Hindalo has always said to me that, you know, he's been bringing people to Sierra Leone for decades. And he always says that most everyone gives Africa one single chance. Africa never gets a second chance. Most people will come, they'll visit some country in Africa, maybe they make it outside the capital city, and then they leave and never come back. But they will always take a second visit to Europe, take a second visit to some other state in the US, but Africa never gets a second chance. And so what does that partnership look like? That partnership looks like coming to Sierra Leone, walking with us, coming to see the country firsthand and gaining that, firsthand perspective that, I talked about back in 2020 when everything with George Floyd, the murder of him, was happening in the city. I wanted to see firsthand with my own eyes to gain my own perspective on what I believed what was happening. That's what we want people to do, is come and see the work that we're doing, come and walk with us, and just be in partnership with these communities. And, this new kind of, building this new democracy, building this new idea of community-led and community-driven engagement and conversation.
That's good. That's good. And thank you so much for the great work that you guys are doing. And finally, maybe I throw this in here. We have lots and lots of Sierra Leoneans who are living here in the Twin Cities. And we have lots of other Africans. The Twin Cities, as you are aware, Dustin, is it's a microcosm of Africa. There are a lot of African immigrants living here. And what we try to do here on the show is to showcase the content of Africa to our audience, particularly talking about each of the African countries. And then we come home based in the Twin Cities on these associations, these nonprofit, how they are impacting both the community here locally or even abroad, well, not abroad, but back home in the countries. And so for some of the immigrants listening to you, for some of the Sierra Leoneans who are hearing the story and the work you're doing, an amazing job you're doing there, how can they be involved? How can they help? What is the way for them? How can the thought processes be in alignment with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, the biggest thing I could say to Sierra Leoneans living here in the Twin Cities in the US is the future. I think we all know this, but the future of the world, the future of our communities here in the Twin Cities, the future of Sierra Leone is in young people. And the more that we can do to invest into young people, creating opportunities and allowing them to formulate and come up with their own ideas and be heard and be expressive in whatever ways they want, that's going to push the needle forward. And that's going to, as Jeremy talked about, put Sierra Leone on the map. And I think that's one of my goals too. I spend my years now, so I live still in Minnesota, but I'm about 3.5 hours north. I live up on a lake in northern Minnesota, and I manage a resort up here. But sometimes when I'm not in Sierra Leone, I do come back to the cities, and want to engage more with this community, because I know that Twin Cities specifically has such a huge population of Liberians and Sierra Leoneans. And one of my goals is working with Hindalo to how can we just start to build more relationships and have these types of conversations. And my favorite place in the world to go to, I've been to 15 countries, and of those 15 countries, I've been to Sierra Leone 7 times. And I'm just gonna keep going back. It's my favorite place in the entire world that I've ever been to. And the more and more that I can talk about it and tell people and share my love for it, and hopefully get people to come over there and experience it for themselves, that's my goal.
Thank you. I think you can see from the comments there being displayed, somebody saying, thank you for the job you're doing. You spoke well. So kudos to you and your team. Thank you, Dustin. It was a pleasure having you.
Yes.
You're doing a great job. You and the team there. It's unfortunate, again, we couldn't have the second guest here because she lost her dad, and our condolences to her and the family. You're doing a good job on the ground in Sierra Leone. Thank you so much. Wonderful. And we will have you again another time. And feel free, this is the show for Africa. The work you're doing, you are welcome here. This is home for you guys. Anytime you guys have programs, you are involved in things you're doing, you can let us know. You guys shared some links with me. I will post those links of your organization and some of the videos on our page on Facebook so that people are aware of some of these things. So thank you. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, folks, that was it for the Africa Desk. This is exactly the kind of diaspora-led, community-driven story we built this show for, to talk about these things. To you out there in the audience, if you would like to learn more about this foundation or support their work, we have their information, like I mentioned, posted on our site, and then you can see how you can be involved there. And if you also have an organization you run and you're making an impact in any of the African countries, whether it's Liberia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, any of the African countries that you're making an impact in, reach out to us, get in touch with us. We would love for the African community to hear about the work you're doing. Just like Dustin and his team, they're doing an amazing job there. So let us know. Reach out to us. We will bring you to the show. You can talk about the job you're doing, the impact you're making both locally and even internationally, So thank you so much. This show is for you. This platform is for you. Before we go, though, looking ahead next Saturday, July 18th, the Africa Desk Live turns to South Africa, for episode 9. 2 years after the historic 2024 election that ended the African National Congress outreach majority, we are asking, after the majority, how is the government of national unity really holding up in South Africa? We'll be joined by Professor Stephen Friedman for a pre-recorded conversation, and then we'll bring his conversation to the live show next Saturday. Do not miss this conversation, because South Africa is one of the beacons of hope on the continent. It's one of the giants of Africa, just like Nigeria is. So do not miss that conversation next week, episode 9, South Africa, right here, 10 a.m. And you don't want to miss that. If you have already not begun to share the show yet or talk to people about it, share the show and let people know what we're doing here. Thank you so much. And until then, we will see you next week, Saturday. Have a great weekend and enjoy this beautiful weather, especially here in the Twin Cities. I have always been Semantics King, and have a great weekend.
That's the Africa Desk Live with Semantics King Jr. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, follow, or share this with someone who needs to hear it. And join us next week. Same time, same desk. Until then, keep the African heart beating.